To start out by saying Happy Father's Day. Now, I'm not a father unless you count our dogs and cats, and we have a very dysfunctional family. But as many of you know, me and Nellie's been trying for over a year now to have a child, and we haven't. But it's given me a lot of time to think about the father that I want to become. And that's what I want to share with you this morning. I want to be the dad that teaches his children to love and to seek wisdom. Now there's this big difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is an accumulation of information, while wisdom is knowing how to use that information. There's a lot of smart people out there. They're book smart, but they have no common sense. Nellie oftentimes tells me, she says, "You're wise, but you do some stupid things." David instilled in his son Solomon a love for wisdom. We see in Proverbs 4:3-9, it says, "When I was a son," this is Solomon speaking, "with my father David, tender, the only one in the sight of my mother, he taught me and said to me, 'Let your heart hold fast my words. Keep my commandments and live. Get wisdom, get insight. Do not forget, and do not turn away from the words of my mouth. Do not forsake her, and she will keep you. Love her, and she will guard you. The beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom, and whatever you get insight. Prize her highly, and she will exalt you. She will honor you if you embrace her. She will place on your head a graceful garland. She will bestow on you a beautiful crown." Now, David started to teach Solomon the love for wisdom at a very young age. The scripture says that, he says, when he was tender, the only one in the sight of his mother, or the only child. Now, in the Israelite community, it was never too soon to start teaching your children a love for God. And David's teaching seemed to pay off in Solomon's life. Because after David had died and now Solomon has become king, it's at the very beginning of his reign, God comes to him in the middle of night during a dream, and he says this to him. He says, "Ask for anything you want and I'll give it to you." Here's a blank check from the creator of all things. What would you ask for? Would you ask for fortune? Would you ask for fame? Would you ask for a long life? It's not what Solomon asked. 1 Kings 3:6-9 says, "And Solomon said, 'You have shown great and steadfast love to your servant David, my father, because he walked before you in faithfulness, in righteousness, and in uprightness of heart toward you. And you have kept from him this great and steadfast love, and have given him a son to sit on his throne this day. And now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of David my father. Although I am but a little child, I do not know how to go out or to come in. And your servant is in the midst of your people whom you have chosen, a great people, too many to be numbered or counted for multitude. Give your servant, therefore, an understanding mind to govern your people, that I may discern between good and evil. For who is able to govern this great people of yours?" So God says, "I will give you whatever you ask from me." Solomon says, "Give me wisdom. I want wisdom to know how to rule your people." That pleased God very much. So God gave him wisdom. God gave him riches. God gave him fame. How good would it feel, though, if the thing that your child desired the most was the thing that you tried to instill in them for years? David taught his son to love wisdom, to seek wisdom. And now Solomon has begun to start to teach his son to love wisdom and to seek wisdom. You see, because most of the book of Proverbs is David teaching his son either wisdom or the love of wisdom. So I want to be the dad that teaches my children to love and to seek wisdom. I also want to be the dad that teaches his children how to treat their spouse. Now, my grandfather, we always called him Pom. He taught me at a very young age how to treat a lady. Now, I can't tell you exactly what he said because it would not be appropriate from the pulpit. Dad always said that he could cuss out a brick and make it blush. So, I can't tell you exactly what he said, but the gist of it is this. He says, no matter what girl you're with, no matter if she's looked at high by society or not, you respect her. I've always tried to do that. Ephesians 5:25 says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. It's a very high calling. To love our wives as Christ loved the church. That's a sacrificial love. It's an unconditional love. It puts her above myself. You know, yes, the scriptures does teach that the husband is the head of the household, but I don't think we actually know what that means oftentimes. Because Jesus told us that if you want to be first, you must be last and the servant of all. So if we're going to be the head of the household, then we're going to be the one who serves the most. You know, oftentimes men look at that passage and think it means that the wife should serve him and do whatever he says. Or that everybody should obey him no matter what it is. A TV show that me and Nellie used to watch was called Wife Swap. And one of the episodes that I remember the most was this Christian couple, or at least they called themselves Christians. The husband would go off to work, and when he would come home, he would expect the house to be spotless. And once he gets home, he expected her to begin to serve him. While all he did was sit on the chair and watch TV. Because he said, well, the scripture says that the man is the head of the house. You know, those kind of attitudes and viewpoints has totally forgotten what Jesus has taught about servanthood and what it means to love your wife as Christ has loved the church. So I want to be the dad that teaches my children how to treat their spouse. I want to be the dad that extends grace and constantly lets my children know how much I love them, how proud I am of them. To do that, you got to make a presence in their life. The National Center of Fathering had an article that was called, Kids Say This is the Biggest Way to Be a Better Dad. Every year they would have an essay contest, and they would read the essays, and then they would give an award to one of the kids. One of the reoccurring themes that they found throughout the essay was that the kid would tell of a fun time that they had with their dad. But they'd usually end it with this. If there's one thing I wish was different with my dad, it would be that we spent more time together. Or they would say, I wish I could do more things with him. We've got to make a presence in our kids' lives. Also, you have to work through those issues that you have instead of avoiding. This may pertain more to older parents who have adult kids, who has had issues in their life, but they've never dealt with them. They've just avoided them, hoping that maybe they would go away. In 1982, many were rooting for the Raiders of the Lost Ark, which was nominated for many Oscar awards, to win many of them. But there was another movie that was also nominated for many awards. It was called On Golden Pond. It's a movie about a father and a daughter who spent dedicated time on the waters of Golden Pond to work through their unhappy relationship. Henry Fonda, at least that's how I think he pronounces it, who played the father of that movie, he won Best Actor that year. And his daughter, Jane, who also played his daughter in the movie, ran up on stage, gave him a huge hug, and said, oh, Dad, I'm so happy for you. I'm so proud of you. But there's quite a backstory behind those 10 words. See, Henry had been one of Hollywood's leading men for 5 decades. But by 1982, he had never won an Oscar, although his daughter had already won 2. There had never been a very warm relationship between the two. Henry was never an outwardly affectionate man, and Jane's political views just drawed a bigger wedge between them. So Jane bought the rights to Golden Pond so that it would help her father win the Oscar. You know, Jane loved her father so much that she bought a movie and cast herself beside of him so that she could say the things that she had so long wanted to say. They found healing through these scripted words. It's a story of how much children want to feel loved. They want to feel forgiven. They want to work through problems instead of avoiding. But it's an example of the daughter taking the initiative. But our kids might not be rich enough to buy a movie to work through our issues. So fathers, we need to take the initiative. There's a Spanish story about a father and a son who became estranged with each other. The son had ran away, and the father set out to find him. He searched for months, but he just couldn't find him. Finally, in that last desperate effort to find him, the father put an ad in the Madrid newspaper that said this. He said, "Dear Paco, meet me in front of this newspaper office at noon on Saturday. All is forgiven. I love you, your father." When Saturday rolled around, there was 800 Pacos that showed up. They was looking for forgiveness and love from their fathers. Now that shows us the importance of showing our children how much we love them, that we forgive them. You know, oftentimes fathers think that they show their love by providing for them, such as putting a roof over their head and food on their table, or by supporting them financially. You know, while those are good things, they don't show the love that a child needs. A child needs to hear. They need to hear those words, "I love you." And you need to show it to them by spending personal time with them. There's a story about a boy who was waiting for his dad to come home from work. And when his dad came home, the dad was just exhausted from a long day. And the boy said, how much money do you make an hour, Dad? He said, "I don't think that's any of your business." He says, "No, I really want to know, how much money do you make an hour?" The man said, "Well, if you have to know, I make $50 an hour." The boy says, "Well, can I?" He bows his head and he says, "Well, can I have $25? You know, the father here was just furious. He's thinking, that's the only reason he asked me how much I make an hour, so that he could ask for some money, maybe to buy a toy or a game or something else. So he sent him to his room. So the father sat there and he thought about it for a while, and he went into the boy's room and he asked him, he says, "Why did you want the $25? And the boy reached over and he grabbed a box and he pulled it open and he pulled out some money. And by this time the father was even more furious. He already has money. Why is he asking for more? But he takes his $25 and he takes the father's $25. He puts it together. He hands it to the dad. And he says, "Can I buy an hour of your time?" You know, children want that personal time with their fathers. Children also need to hear those words, "I'm proud of you." You know, you never know how much that will mean to your child. Nothing against my father. He was just never raised that way. But I've always longed to hear him say, "I'm proud of you." He said it before, but it's only when I've asked him. So we need to tell our kids how proud we are of them and how much we love them. So I want to be the dad that extends grace and constantly lets my children know how much I love them and how proud I am of them. I want to be the dad that teaches his children to know, to love, and to serve the Lord. Ephesians 6:4 says, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord." One of the ways we can do this is by setting them an example. We set them an example in church attendance. I had once sat down with a couple and I had talked to them, and they was talking about having kids in the future. And the husband at the time, he really didn't see a point in going to church. Not that he had anything against the church, he just didn't see that there was any need in his own life. But he said, when I have kids, I want them involved in church when they're young. I looked at him and I told him, if you don't make it a priority for your life, they're not going to make it a priority for their life. We have to set that example for them to follow. We've got to set an example in church attendance. We've got to set an example in our study. You know, one of the things that I admired most about my dad is that every time that I'd wake up in the morning, I'd go into the living room, he'd either be sitting on the chair or on the couch, and he'd be reading the scriptures. He didn't read a lot throughout the day. He usually read two chapters a day. But he did it day after day after day. I don't think he's missed a day in years. We need to set an example in study. We need to set an example in our service. We need to teach our kids what servanthood looks like, what it looks like within the home, as we serve our family members and show them our love. We need to show them what servanthood looks like within the church. As we serve the Lord, as we serve one another, we need to show them what a servant looks like within even their workplace. Because the work ethic of a Christian can be a great example to the outside world. We also need to make time to sit down and study with them. Deuteronomy 6:4-9 says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. All these words that I command you today shall be on your hearts. You shall teach them diligently to your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you arise. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. You shall write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates." You see, this passage is teaching the importance of teaching our kids. You know, I've told this story probably many times before, but I'm going to tell it again because I think it sets the perfect example of what that looks like. When I was a kid, me and Dad would go to the back bedroom, and we'd sit down, and he'd open up his Bible, and he'd show a passage that he had underlined and that he loved. And I'd grab my Bible, I'd underline the same passage, and Dad would say, "Do you know what it means?" "No, I don't." And he would explain it to me. Then he would go to another passage, and I'd underline that in my Bible, and he says, "Do you know what that means?" "No, I don't." And he would explain it to me. You know, I love those times. It was very precious to me because it's what started my love for Scriptures. And to dive in deep to see what it truly means. We need to be there to teach our kids. We need to be there to show them or to teach them to know, to love, and to serve the Lord. You know, we've looked a lot today at what a father should look like, or what kind of father that I hope to be one day. But we can't close without looking at our Heavenly Father, who is the perfect example of love, grace, patience, and kindness. Now, God is waiting for you to come to Him and to accept His love, His sacrifice, His devotion to you. Or maybe you're that wayward child. You have left home and you're wondering if you can return. You know, the Scriptures teach us that God is like that father who's looking out to see when his son returns. And when he sees him a long way off, he runs to him. That's the same type of love that God wants to extend to you. Whatever your decision is, come out.